Okay, we're ready for takeoff.
All right.
So we're going back to do a new Mishnah. We'll go back to the front of the booklet, all the way in the front where we have the Mishnah. And we're doing Mishnah 12. I think there was one thing I left yesterday, one of the phrases in the bottom. Let me see. The last one on page 10. We're talking about bitachon. So there's a quote. Interesting where that quote is from. So I have to look it up to see exactly where it's from. But the words are in Hebrew, Yeshuat Hashem Keheref Ayin, which means salvation from Hashem comes like the blink of an eye. In other words, in a moment, things could turn around and change. And unfortunately, sometimes it's just 1 second and something happens which is the opposite of tragedy. And in 1 second, a person's life is upside down and the negative. So Hashem could also do exactly the same in the positive. And in one moment, everything turns around in a positive way. So now we'll go to Mishnah 12. So we're back to the beginning and look for Mishnah 12. Hillel and Shammai. These are probably one of the most known names in the Talmud. Hillel and Shammai, they were two great sages. And as I mentioned that in this Pirkei Avos, it gives us the chain of tradition. Who were the leaders of Torah? Who were the authorities of Torah in each generation? And they were the ones who transmitted to the next generation. So there are 5 generations that in each one, there were 2 people. Most of the generation, it was 1 person. In 5 generations, there were 2 people. And this is one of them where the 2 people were Hillel and Shammai. Exactly what were their positions as the 2 people on top. So in the days that we had a king, the highest position in the country was a king. After the temple was destroyed, there were no longer any kings. So the highest position, which was in a sense in place of king, the term in Hebrew was Nasi. Nasi, which would also mean like the leader, the president, the head, the top person. But really that's sort of the highest position of leadership. The second thing is that in those days, they still had Sanhedrin. Sanhedrin means that there was a lot of different courts of rabbis around the country. And there was one court of rabbis, which is the highest court of rabbis. They had the greatest sages in the country. And they were the ultimate decision makers. If there was any doubt or questions or disagreements, it would be brought to this court. You would call this the ultimate Supreme Court. They were located in Jerusalem, in the temple itself. And they were called Sanhedrin. And it was made up of 71 sages. The person who was the head of the Sanhedrin, in a certain sense, he was the leader because everything goes by Torah. And in terms of Torah, everything goes by the sages who are in the courts and they make the rulings. And this was the highest authority of Torah ruling in the country. And this was the highest person in that position in the court. So these were the 2 people. Hillel was the Nasi, he was the leader. Had there been kings in those days, he would have been the king. And Shammai was the top person, which is called Av Bezdin, the head of the highest court of rabbis. So they were the ones in the next generation, following the previous Mishnah. And then it goes on to say something that Hillel said and something that Shammai said. First Hillel Omer. Hillel said, you should be among the disciples of Aaron. That means we should all choose to follow the path of Aaron. Who's Aaron? This is Aaron, the brother of Moshe Rabbeinu. And what was so unique about Aaron loving peace, pursuing peace, loving all created beings, and bringing them closer to the Torah. So there are 4 points here. Why is this about Aaron? So in the Torah, it tells us an interesting thing that when Moshe Rabbeinu passed away, all the Jews came out to see him, to escort him by the funeral. When Aaron passed away, the Torah used a term indicating that every single Jew went out, even more than Moshe. So the Gemara says, what was it about Aaron that he had more people come out to see him in his last in his last moments than Moshe? And instead, Aaron was known as a peacemaker. Whenever there were two people that had some issue between each other, whether it was two friends, whether it was husband and wife, he found a way to get involved and try to find a way to reconcile, bring them both together. And because of that, everyone loved him and everyone had a tremendous feeling for him. And especially in terms of marriages, there's so many marriages that he helped put together that the men and the women both admired him and respected him and had a feeling for him that therefore they came out. But he had an interesting approach. Now we know the secret. Obviously, then they didn't. The secret is what he used to do was he went to one party. Let's say he went to the husband and said, I heard there's some issues between you and your wife. I want you to know I spoke to your wife. She feels horrible about what happened. She's really sorry. And she'd like to apologize, but she's afraid how you'll react. But you should know that's how she feels. Goes, oh, really? Okay. Then he would go to the wife, race real quickly, and say, I spoke to your husband. He feels, horrible about what happened. He really wants to apologize, but he's afraid that how you're going to react. She'll take him, seriously. Oh, really? Okay, so fine. When the two met, each one thinks that the other one initiated this whole apology business, and they worked out fine. And the Gemara discusses, we'll still see this in the sheet, but it's lying, not being truthful. And the answer is, when it comes to something like bringing peace between two people, bringing peace in a family between husband and wife, or parents and children, it is so such an important thing, so crucial that you're allowed to change information a little bit in order to make that happen. Yes?
Isn't peace always supposed to be more important than truth? Because it's like if someone is like, hey, do you like this sweater that I just made? And it's like their first attempt at making it, it's like ugly. They know it's ugly, you know it's like you don't say like that's an ugly sweater. You're like, oh no, it's great, because it wouldn't keep the peace to be like, just to be honest, that's like disgusting. So like you
we're gonna have a class
you
about that.
like,
yes. That's all part of it. That's included in what we're going to be learning, that for the sake of peace, and of course we have to know where to draw the line. Everything has a line. Remember we said every rule has an exception to the rule. And there's also, where does it apply, where doesn't it apply? Sometimes people take this principle a little bit too far. So we have to know when does it apply and how does it apply. But definitely what we see from here is that Aaron, number one, loved peace. Now there's a lot of people that they love peace, but they're passive. They don't do anything about it. They're not proactive. So you have two things. Number one, he loved peace, and reidev shalom, which in Hebrew means he pursued, he was proactive in doing whatever he can to make peace between people and amongst each other. The third thing is he loved all created beings. He loved every person. He had a love for people. And he would try and bring them closer to the Torah. That's the Mishnah, and now we'll do the commentary. Yeah. Aaron, he was the brother of Moshe Rabbeinu, of Moses. In the Torah, Moses was the leader, and he was the high priest. He was older than Moses, but he was also a great tzaddik, a very righteous person. So now we'll go to page. Where is the top? Page 12. Let's go to page 12. No, page 11. Page 11. The subject of peace I put it down a little bit later. It's actually page 25. So we'll leave that subject for later. I want to talk about the subject where it says that he loved everyone, he had love for everyone, and he made every effort to bring them closer to Torah. So if you would have to ask, what is this character trait we're talking about? So on top of the page, I wrote the words Avos Yisrael, love for a fellow Jew, even though we'll soon see that his love was not only for a Jew, but for everyone, as we'll soon see. But let's first start with the mitzvah of Avos Yisrael, which means there's a commandment in the Torah. It's actually one of the 613 commandments, which is V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. You see it on the top of the page, number 1, talking about page 11, where it says you should love your fellow Jew as yourself. But then it adds, Rabbi Akiva was one of the greatest sages of the Talmud. He said, Zeh klal gadol b'Torah, this is a basic principle of Torah, which means not only is this just one other of the 613 commandments, but it's a basic principle, which means that a lot of laws in Torah and a lot of details of all these laws, they're all based on this one single principle, that you should love your fellow as you love yourself. Now, there's a lot of discussion what this means, and also how is it even possible? How could you love someone else like you love yourself? So on a practical level, it'll be explained by number 2. Number 2 is also a quote from Gemara, and actually a story that happened with these 2 people, Hillel and Shammai. If you know anything about the background of these 2 rabbis, these 2 sages, they were known that they had different opinions about different subjects. And not only that, they both established huge yeshivas. And those yeshivas, which means even the future generations, were very different to their opinion. So very often you have in the Talmud, you probably can't even turn 2 to 3 pages without having something in the Talmud that the school of Hillel says one thing and the school of Shammai says the opposite. In majority of cases, Hillel, that school, was always more lenient. Shammai was always more strict. Again, they were both righteous people. They were both great tzaddikim. They were both Torah scholars, and whatever they said was all based on their understanding of Torah. But their way of thinking and their way of approaching things was different. Hillel was more softer. He was more what we would call in Hasidus chesed. And Shammai was more harsh, judgment, strong. You know, in English we say tough love. Sometimes you might love someone, but still you have to deal with it in a tough way. Yeah.
Isn't it like a thing that like now we mostly follow like Hillel's decrees, but like in the time of Mashiach, it'll be Shammai?
Right. When there is a difference of opinion between the 2, the halacha is mostly like Hillel. When Mashiach comes, the halacha will be like Shammai. That's another discussion. Maybe we'll talk about it in the Mashiach class. Okay. So there's a story in Gemara, a number of stories where the Gemara shows us that not only were that how they were so different in their personality. It tells the following story: that there was a non-Jew that came to Shammai, and he said, "Rabbi, I want to convert to Judaism, but I'd like you to teach me the entire Torah as I stand on 1 foot, 1 leg." So the rabbi said, "You know, you're not serious. Sorry. Goodbye. Have a nice day."
Well, he chased him.
That I didn't hear. They chased him with a stick. No, he didn't chase him with a stick. He just said that he's not accepting it. So he heard that Hillel is much more lenient. So he came to Hillel and he said, "Rabbi, I'd like to convert to Judaism and I want you to teach me the whole Torah as I stand on 1 leg." So the rabbi said, "No problem. Let me tell you the whole Torah on 1 leg." And he gave him this quote. Number 2. Ma da'aloch sani lechaverech lo sabe. This is Aramaic. It means what you don't want others to do to you, don't do to them. That's the whole Torah. All the rest is commentary. That's what he said.
Do you know if that guy ever actually got to convert to Judaism? Because it kind of seems like he wouldn't deserve it.
He probably did. He went to Hillel
But
and he gave him easy pass. Yeah. Well, actually, it's interesting. There are commentaries in the Gemara on this, and they say that the person who made this comment, the non-Jew, also meant the same thing. give me a principle that the whole Torah stands on this principle like a person who stands on one leg. In other words, he wanted to hear something that's all encompassing in the whole Torah. And he said something incredible. And there's so much discussion in the commentators on what it means. He basically said, don't do to others what you wouldn't want others to do to you. That's the entire Torah. Everything else is all commentary.
I think when I first heard it, I took it as like, don't do what you're doing right now. Like what you're doing right now is rude.
What am I doing? What
no,
am I doing wrong?
No, like what the guy who's asking, not you. I think I initially I guess misinterpreted it as like.
No. It was a general. It was a general principle. Yes.
Does this or like anyone have anything to say about how this statement is like a double negative? Like why isn't it just positive?
Yes. There's actually a Maimer Hasidic discourse from Tzedek, the third Rebbe of Chabad, and one of the focuses is why is it in the negative, why not in the positive? I think there's an English writer, I once saw this in an office somewhere hanging on the wall, he writes, do to others what you would want others to do to you. And very likely he took it from the Talmud, but in the Gemara, it's in the negative, and there's a reason why. Don't do to others what you wouldn't want others to do to you. So first of all, the simple meaning of these words is also that sometimes you might be doing something to another person and you don't see it as I'm doing anything wrong. In fact, you have a reason why you're doing it. And one of the ways, and if we can fool ourselves. We spoke about this many times. One of the most important points in Pirkei Avos is that we have to realize that we are blinded a little bit by self-love and we don't see our own flaws, our own weaknesses. And very often we might do something, and in my mind, I feel I'm very righteous by what I'm doing. So one of the ways that I can sort of test myself to know if what I'm doing is really okay, to stop for a second and think, would I mind if someone would do this to me? And suddenly you realize, I sure would. And then you realize this is the wrong thing to do. There's more to it, which we'll soon go into. But the biggest question here, which we won't be able to go into in this class, but there are definitely in the Gemara itself, there's commentary. In Chassidus, there's a lot of commentary. There's a chapter in Tanya dedicated to this, chapter 32. The biggest question is, okay, all the laws that pertain to interpersonal relationship might be based on this principle. Like we learned, visiting the sick, giving charity, giving someone a loan, helping a bride, inviting guests. It's all based on this principle, do to others what would you want others to do to you. Don't do to others what you wouldn't want others to do to you. What about Shabbos, keeping kosher? The laws pertaining to marriage and relationship. Has that anything to do with don't do to others what you wouldn't want others to do to you? So that's a big discussion. I'm just making you aware that there is such a discussion and there are answers. In case you can't fall asleep at night, you should know there are answers to the question.
Again, why is negative in the Gemara?
I didn't give the answer. I just said that there's a mimer from the Tzemach Tzedek to Rebbe Chabad where he goes into it, but it's like too much detail to be able to give it in this class.
Okay.
It'll end up being a Chassidus class and a Pirkei Avos class.
Okay.
That's one of the most important things in a class, to try to keep it, on the highway. Take a detour to get a coffee, and before you know it, you're going the wrong way. I try to keep on straight. We go for a little bit, but not too much. Now, there's another very important thing about this. When we say, do for others what you would like for yourself, or don't do to others what you wouldn't want to do to you, it doesn't necessarily mean literally. I'll tell you what I mean by that. Imagine you have a guest in your house. What should I put on the table? What should I give the guest? And you say, I love bananas. I love rice. I love potatoes. I'll give my guest the foods that I love, because you're supposed to love your friend like you love yourself. So if this is what I want for myself, this is what I'll give them. Is that right or wrong? It might be
wrong because he cannot.
Of course, the person that's coming to you doesn't like this food. You might be allergic to this food.
Yeah.
So when it says do to others and love someone like yourself, it means whatever you would do for yourself, which is eating foods that you enjoy, that's what you do for others. And part of our effort should be to try to understand what the other person enjoys. often in a relationship, this is one of the problems, husband and wife, where one will do something for the other, but they're doing something more of what they would enjoy rather than what their spouse enjoys. I mean, what I'm going to say now is a little bit extreme, but it's a true story. And it happens very often, maybe in a more subtle way. But there was once a couple that I was talking to. They were having some issues in their marriage. And the wife was complaining that the husband never buys anything for birthday, anniversary. And she feels that he's not into it. So I asked him, so what do you say? I always have to hear the other side of the story. So he says, well, I used to do it, and she just rejected it, so I stopped. I think it's quite common, this kind of a scenario. So she says to him, Rabbi, let me tell you what he's talking about. We used to go shopping, and there was a piece of furniture that he loved. I didn't like it. He always wanted to buy it, and I said no. One day, he walks into the house with this piece of furniture and says, here's a present for your birthday. I said, you didn't buy me a present, you bought yourself a present. In other words, she made it clear that she doesn't like this. Why are you buying this for her birthday? Because you like it? So in other words, the definition of a gift is when you think, what would this person enjoy? What would give them pleasure? And that's what I do. So when it says here, don't do to others what you wouldn't want others to do to you, or love someone else like you love yourself, it doesn't necessarily mean the technical details. It means in the idea, do to others what you would like people to do to you, and don't do to someone else what you would resent that people would do that to you. So from Rabbi Akiva, we know that this is a cardinal principle of Torah. From Hillel, it's even more than a cardinal principle. He's saying this is the essence, this is the core of the entire Torah, and everything else is commentary, which we need commentary to understand why it is that way, but that's what it says. So on the rest of the page is just different phrases, different quotes that relate to the idea of Avos Yisrael, of love for a fellow Jew. And there's, of course, much, much more we can talk about this subject. But we dedicated 2 pages for this page 11 and 12. So let me explain the other ones. Number 4, and by the way, this is a very beautiful sikha that everyone gave, that in the Torah, there's a famous verse in the Torah. It's in Devarim, Deuteronomy, where it says, you're all standing here together. And then it lists 10 categories. The heads of the community, the heads of the tribes, and the rabbis, and the sages, and the simple people, and the water carriers, and the wood choppers. But nevertheless, you're all united as one. So the Rebbe asked the question, if the Torah wants to emphasize that we're all one, why even mention different classes, different grades, different categories? That only leaves room for division. You know, I'm the head and you're the simple. You're a water carrier and I'm this and you're that. Why even mention that there are different categories? Just say we're all one. And the point he brought out, which is related to what I just said, is an interesting point. That the only way that could be truly, people could perform the mitzvah truly of loving your fellow is by recognizing that there are differences. We're all different. We have different needs. Different things make different people happy. And different things make, because if someone says, what do you care? I don't mind that someone does this. Why do you mind? You can't say that. I mind and you don't mind. I do mind, you don't. People are different. So the same thing that is annoying to one person might be okay for another person. So in a relationship, very often people judge the other person according to themselves. So recognizing there are differences is actually the key to interacting with other people in a positive way. True unity comes from recognizing differences. Yeah.
So, like, I guess maybe this is a different situation, but with that outlook, like, we always talk about, like, the secular world or, like, goyish things or, like, oh, we don't agree with this, like, this is very fundamentally wrong. And, like, we can't just, like, say it, but they like it and they're happy with doing this. So, like, we let them be. It's more like I hear a lot of people get upset over the way certain people live their lives. So I guess I'm just wondering, why don't we take this of, okay, well, they like it, and we love a fellow, and just like
go on or respect another because we are different, why don't we do that?
I guess it depends. In something, you're right, it should apply. In some things, if you remember one of the first classes we gave when we spoke about Pirkei Avos, was that one of the differences between the Torah world and I guess the secular world, especially in today's day and age, is as a person who is a liberal-minded person believes there is no such thing as absolute right or wrong, absolute good and bad. It all depends on you. If you enjoy it, it's good for you. If you don't enjoy it, it's not. But there's no such thing as absolute good. So on that basis, you could say you can't make any comments about something. If that person enjoys it, then it's good. But if you believe there's certain things which are absolutely, truthfully ethical and things which are not ethical, things which are moral, not moral. So if someone acts in a way that goes against those principles, then even though normally I would say, let everybody be whoever they are, again, when the point is not to knock the person, by the way. If anything, we're talking about the act, the thing the person is doing. Let's say if I believe that stealing is unethical. So I don't have to hate the person that's stealing, and I shouldn't hate the person. I could say what I don't like is the act of stealing. When I hate the person, I'm already judging the person. That's a different story. But if I believe that there are principles of truth, principles of things that are proper and improper, then naturally I will reject something which goes against those principles. If there aren't any principles, and the only rule is whatever you enjoy is automatically okay, then you're right. Then it's not just secular Jews and not it's non-Jews, Jews, even religious Jews do things that are inappropriate. Now we'll say that it's wrong.
And you say like, this isn't right for me, but like I accept them for who they are.
We can agree to disagree. Yeah, with the person, it should never get in the way between me and the other person. If it's not a way of life that I agree with, that's the way of life, but not the person. I shouldn't reject the person and I shouldn't judge or put down the person. That's true. Yeah.
But isn't there also an idea that if there's like, you see a Jew breaking or breaking a mitzvah, or you see a Jew, is that what you'd say, breaking a mitzvah?
Violating.
Okay, if you see a Jew violating a mitzvah, that it's your responsibility to let them know that they're doing that?
So we're going to learn about that. Actually, it's connected to this class, but it's on the other side of the page.
Okay.
And we're going to learn that it doesn't always apply.
Okay.
It applies when you know that it's going to help and the person will appreciate it. But if you're going to be telling them something that'll make them resent it even more, then you're defeating the purpose.
Wow. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
With like the things other people do, like makes with like being able to like maintain like stuff like positive relationships with the people doing it. It makes like a difference if like the thing they're doing is like just something you think or like the Torah says is unethical, or if it's like something that's like actively hurting themselves or others. Like those are like different categories of things. Like, 'cause, like you can say like that, like I don't know, when like I know that like what you said is like there's no like absolute like good according to
Not
those things.
According to some
According to
people,
those
right?
things, but there's definitely still absolute bad things like
Not everybody
Genocide.
agrees.
genocide is absolutely bad. But
According to you, that's your opinion.
according to everyone who has opinion.
I said, if we don't believe in Torah and Hashem, how could you make a statement that this is, someone else will tell you, and I believe, I mean, the Germans said they believe genocide is good. And they're not the only nation and community.
They justified it by saying that we were less than people. so
Right,
genocide.
people who do things like that always justify by some reason or other, but you can justify everything and anything. Everything and anything can be justified. If there's no absolute truth, it's just up to people. Everybody can make their own choices. Yeah.
I think it's rare for us to really experience what it's like when you're living in a place where there's no sense of absolute truth. I actually somewhat had that experience when I was living on the island of Maui for about 4 years, like different groups of people coming from all over the world who have radically different ideas about the most basic things of reality.
Okay.
Like whether just in a way that, people who believe that you could actually nourish yourself without food, but just with sunlight. I met a lot of people like that. And that you wouldn't die, that you could just,
What happened?
I don't know. I didn't become close with them, but, or people who believed that, that, just.
You know,
the
there are a lot of
most
things out there,
extreme
right?
differences about, and so it was so ungrounding to be around people who couldn't agree on the basics of reality.
Right.
That like getting to go to like the Chabad every week for Shabbos and just be like, okay, someone's on the same page about something was very
Yeah.
relieving. So yeah, like we don't experience, I think, in New York City, relative morality as much. People have some general consensus about some things, but elsewhere on planet Earth, there is like much more relative reality, and it's really different.
Scary.
Yeah.
Okay. So one more thing is number 4. These words are in davening, where it says, Baruchenu Avinu. It's part of our prayers at the end of the Shemona Esrei, the Amidah. Bless us, our Father. Kulanu Kechad, bless us all as one. Literally, it means Hashem, give us all together your blessing. But there's another interpretation that it means, when are we a vessel that could receive, contain, and retain Hashem's bracha if we're all like one? In other words, just like a cup, if everything is complete, you can put the water in and it'll stay there. If something is broken, cracked, and there's a little space, everything leaks out. So when is a person, people, a vessel for bracha is when there's unity. And in fact, this applies to everything. It applies to a family, it applies to a community, it applies to a country, and applies, of course, to the whole world. That when people are united together, that's when they're a vessel for bracha. In fact, I don't know if I have this in the terms, but there's a term in Gemara that more or less says that if a person has a lot of blessing, but there's no peace, then all the other blessings are not really, truly significant. In Shalom Kan, Hakol Kan. I think we'll have that when we talk about peace. That's more about the peace part, about the unity part. But Avos Yisrael is love for a fellow Jew, but it's also unity, no division between one person and a person. To look and find what it is that connects the two of us, rather than to look for what separates the two of us. So there's 2 words that are used. Sometimes we use the word Avos Yisrael, which is on top of the page, which is an emotion, feeling of love, to love another person. When you love someone, you want to go out of your way to help them, you care for them, you want to protect them. And the other term that's used is Achdus Yisrael, which means unity of Jews. So that's why the 2 things do go together. Unity, when people are caring for each other and looking out for each other and have a feeling for each other, then they're united as one. And this is one of the principles of when are we a vessel for Hashem's bracha, when we're all united. I'll stop here, and to be continued, Mirz Hashem tomorrow.
Thank you.